Meghan Markle, once the Duchess of Sussex, sat in a sleek, modern office, the light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection was strong, confident, a far cry from the young actress struggling to find her place in Hollywood. Now, as a mother, entrepreneur and former royal, she had grown into something more complex. A woman who was not just navigating the media storm, but using it to her advantage. She'd been through the royal machine, spat out and built her own empire in the process. "I can do this," Meghan whispered to herself, feeling a spark of excitement. She had spent years cultivating an image and building connections. Now it was time to take control of her future. With a diverse team of executives by her side, she set her sights on turning her entrepreneurial ventures into something monumental, maybe even a billion-dollar empire. Her latest project was ambitious, a podcast series called Confessions of a Female Founder, designed to empower women with advice on transforming their ideas into world-changing businesses. Meghan knew this wouldn't just be any ordinary podcast. She had already demonstrated her skill for creating compelling content with her Netflix series, With Love, Meghan, though not without its critics, but she was undeterred. This time, she was focused, armed with a vision that transcended the typical royal drama. A deep sense of satisfaction washed over her. Meghan was no longer just a duchess or a former actress. She was a mogul in the making. Meghan Markle had come a long way from the set of Suits, where she played Rachel Zane. She was no longer just a young actress trying to break into Hollywood. She had reinvented herself multiple times over, from American TV star to Duchess of Sussex, and now to a burgeoning entrepreneur. As she sat in her sleek, minimalist office in Montecito, the weight of her journey settled on her shoulders. Her eyes glinted with determination. Meghan had faced media scrutiny, public judgment, and countless challenges, but one thing remained constant: her ambition. Since stepping away from the royal family, Meghan had been the target of constant media attention, often unfairly criticised for her every move. Despite this, she maintained an air of grace and strength. Behind her poised public appearance was a woman with a clear vision: to build a life of independence, to prove that success could be achieved outside the constraints of royal titles, and to leverage her influence in ways that felt true to herself. With her latest venture, a podcast series entitled Confessions of a Female Founder, Meghan aimed to speak directly to women who, like her, dreamed of something more than a traditional path. The podcast wasn't just about sharing business advice. It was about opening up her own experiences, learning from failure, and building something sustainable. Meghan had worked tirelessly on the concept for months, collaborating with executives from the tech, fashion, and entertainment industries. The team she had assembled was second to none, each member bringing a wealth of experience in turning small ideas into scalable businesses. This podcast, to Meghan, was more than just a side project. It was her declaration of independence, of self-sufficiency. She wasn't just looking to make money or live a life of luxury. She had spent years cultivating a public persona. Now she would take that influence and build a brand that transcended the limits of royalty. As she thought about the upcoming launch, Meghan was filled with anticipation. She had always believed in the power of ideas, and now she had a platform to bring them to life. If anything, her royal title was no longer a limitation. It was a tool she could use to amplify her voice and message. The royal family's critics would never let her forget it. The very notion that someone with royal titles could aspire to financial independence seemed to them beneath the dignity of nobility. Meghan had grown accustomed to their snide remarks. To them, her ventures represented something vulgar. "She's doing this for money," they sneered. But what they failed to grasp was that Meghan had always been strategic. She wasn't chasing money, she was building wealth, not just for herself, but for her children, for her legacy. "She thinks she's going to be a billionaire," one unnamed source told the press. Meghan smiled. The media had been wrong about her from the start. They believed she had left the royal family in search of a lavish life, an endless wealth of material things. They failed to see that her true motivation was not the lifestyle of luxury, but rather the autonomy that came with it. The headlines painted her as a woman who craved the private jet lifestyle, someone who longed for the opulence she'd once thought was her birthright when she married Prince Harry. But Meghan knew better. Her marriage to Harry had never been about the material trappings of royalty. It had been about love. The media, of course, would never understand that. Her ambition, though, was not to be confined by the limitations they had placed on her. Confessions of a Female Founder was her vehicle to success, her way of turning a small idea into a global conversation. As the first episode of Confessions of a Female Founder dropped, the response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Meghan's candid storytelling resonated with listeners. She spoke with honesty about the struggles of building a business, drawing from her own experiences, navigating the tumultuous waters of media scrutiny, marriage and motherhood. The podcast wasn't just another celebrity platform, it was a blueprint for success. Each episode delved deep into the art of entrepreneurship, featuring guest experts who shared insights on everything from leadership to financial planning. But Meghan's charm lay in her relatability. She wasn't a detached celebrity lecturing from a pedestal. She was a woman who had fought for every step of her success. The more she spoke about turning small ideas into big dreams, the more people began to believe in her vision. There was an energy in the air, an undeniable momentum that had once been absent in her life. Meghan's business was growing and she could feel herself gaining the financial and personal freedom she had always craved. Then came her next move, the online store. Meghan had spent years curating her public image, making headlines with every outfit she wore. Now she turned that influence into something more tangible. The online store offered followers a chance to buy the very same clothes and accessories she wore, turning her personal style into a business. The public was captivated. Meghan wasn't just selling clothes, she was selling an aspiration. Each item she featured in the store told a story of success, of reinvention, of the possibility of a better, more empowered life. Meghan was no longer just the Duchess of Sussex. She was the face of a movement. Her critics would never admit it, but Meghan was proving something important. It was possible to embrace wealth and influence without losing oneself. She wasn't using her royal status to cash in on her title. She was using it to build something lasting and meaningful. As the months went by, the press continued to buzz with speculation. Some outlets suggested that Meghan's ambition had always been to become a billionaire, to live a life filled with the kind of luxury she had once imagined she would inherit from the royal family. But Meghan knew better. Becoming a billionaire wasn't the end goal. It was just one possible outcome. The real prize was freedom. Freedom to live her life on her own terms, to choose her own projects, and to build a legacy of empowerment and success. She had already begun to see the fruits of her labor. Her podcast was topping charts. Her online store was thriving. And behind the scenes, her team of executives were helping her develop even more opportunities, partnerships with major brands, investment in tech companies, and more. When Confessions of a Female Founder debuted, it was clear Meghan had struck a chord with a massive audience. The premise was simple. Meghan and her guests would dive into the realities of starting a business, what it took to go from an idea to a successful company, how to face setbacks and criticism, and what it meant to lead as a woman in a male-dominated world. But what made the podcast so magnetic was Meghan herself. Unlike many public figures who were guarded and distant, Meghan was authentic. She shared her own story, not just the highlights, but the struggles. She talked openly about the challenges she had faced as a biracial woman in the entertainment industry, the pressure of living under the royal spotlight, and her evolution from a working actress to a public figure with a global platform. She also revealed the highs and lows of creating her own business, explaining how every venture, from her work with Archewell to her Netflix projects, was a learning experience. She didn't sugarcoat anything. There were moments of doubt, fear, and rejection, but she was determined to make it. Meghan wasn't simply offering advice. She was showing people that even someone as famous as her had to face the same struggles as any entrepreneur. What made the podcast resonate with so many was Meghan's vulnerability and her commitment to helping others succeed. She understood the value of mentorship, and that was the essence of her podcast. She wasn't just talking about business. She was showing how it was possible for women to turn their passions into profitable ventures, no matter their starting point. Each episode of the podcast revealed more of Meghan's business acumen. She had always been underestimated, but she was proving to the world that she could run a successful business empire while remaining true to her core values. Her podcast was a vehicle for empowerment, something that not only resonated with women, but also with men who admired her strength and vision. While the podcast was gaining momentum, Meghan had already begun work on her next big idea, an online store. It wasn't just any store, though. Meghan was well aware of the power of her personal brand, and she had spent years cultivating a reputation for elegance, sophistication, and intelligence. The store would offer her followers a chance to buy the exact clothes and accessories she wore. Everything from casual outfits to chic dresses she wore to engagements, and the polished styles she showcased in her Netflix series. But there was more to it than just selling products. The store was part of a larger vision. Meghan understood that in today's world, influence was currency. She wasn't just selling products, she was selling an experience, an aspiration. Through her clothing line, she could inspire others to emulate her style, to live with confidence and to embrace their own unique journeys. The online store also reflected her commitment to sustainability and ethical business practices. Meghan had long been vocal about issues like climate change and conscious consumerism, and this venture was an extension of that. Each product she sold had a story, a message that aligned with her values, the power of thoughtful consumption and supporting ethical businesses. Her critics might call it cashing in, but Meghan saw it as creating opportunities, not just for herself, but for others as well. The online store was just another way to empower women, giving them access to the same high-quality, elegant pieces she wore and embodying a sense of confidence and self-assurance. As time passed, the media continued to latch onto the idea that Meghan was on the path to becoming a billionaire. Headlines would often focus on her growing portfolio of ventures, her expanding business empire, and her increasing influence. But what was often overlooked in the frenzy was the reality of how much work had gone into each venture. Meghan was far from naive about the pressures and challenges of building a business. While becoming a billionaire might be a possibility, it was never her sole focus. The true reward for her was the freedom that came with financial independence, the ability to create opportunities, not just for herself, but for her children, her team, and her global community. Her vision went beyond money. She wanted to build something lasting, whether that meant developing new tech products, investing in companies she believed in, or championing causes she was passionate about. Each step in her career was intentional, a building block to something greater. She wasn't chasing status, she was creating it. Behind the scenes, Meghan's empire was expanding. She was involved in multiple partnerships with brands that aligned with her values, from ethical fashion companies to cutting-edge tech startups. She had developed relationships with some of the world's most successful investors, and her influence had reached far beyond the entertainment industry. But even as her ventures flourished, Meghan maintained a sense of humility. She didn't seek fame for fame's sake, she sought to make a difference. It was clear to Meghan that her vision was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality. One evening, as Meghan sat in her home in Montecito, reflecting on how far she had come, she couldn't help but smile. The headlines still followed her, but they no longer controlled her. The critics, the media, the so-called royalists, they couldn't define her any longer. She had created her own narrative. She had taken her titles, her experiences, and her passions and turned them into something much more significant than a mere privilege. For Meghan, the true measure of success was not in the money, nor in the fame, but in the ability to do what she loved, to make a difference, and to prove that she could be both an empowered woman and a successful entrepreneur. And as she looked ahead, she knew this was only the beginning. The world would soon learn what it meant to live a life on her own terms. In the end, Meghan Markle wasn't just a duchess or a former royal or an actress. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who redefined what it meant to be truly powerful. and she would continue to rise no matter how many people tried to tear her down. The media's reaction to Meghan's ventures was as predictable as it was reductive. When it came to the Duchess of Sussex, people didn't seem to know how to react to her ambition. On one hand, there was admiration for her poise and intelligence. On the other, a deep-seated resentment against the idea that someone with a royal title might strive for financial success, or worse, appear to profit from the privileges that came with it. The press painted her as a woman who, according to the tabloids, craved wealth and luxury. They claimed that she and Harry had left the royal family to escape the limitations of royal life, but the assumption was that they had done so to live a lavish existence. The press was relentless in its portrayal of Meghan as someone who wanted to have it all: money, fame and control. But Meghan understood one thing that the critics didn't. Her ambition was not driven by an insatiable need for luxury. It was fueled by something much deeper, the desire to have autonomy, to be the architect of her own life. The notion that Meghan might one day become a billionaire wasn't an idle rumour. It was rooted in a very deliberate and well-executed plan. When she launched her podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, the media seized upon her words and headlines soon followed. Meghan Markle aiming for billionaire status. The emphasis was on her aspirations, not just as a businesswoman, but as a person who was reshaping the narrative around women's success and power. Despite this, Meghan remained unfazed. She knew the media had always misrepresented her. They framed her exit from the royal family as a dramatic rejection of royalty, painting her as someone who wanted more than a life of service. But Meghan didn't want more things. She wanted the freedom to live authentically. She had made a clear choice to step away from royal duties, not because of the opulence, but because she wanted to redefine what success looked like on her own terms. She no longer wanted to live within the constraints of a system that in many ways had restricted her. Her critics still didn't understand. To them, her career would always be a quest for fame and fortune. To her, it was a journey toward freedom. As the years passed, Meghan continued to redefine what it meant to be royal. She had once been part of an institution that demanded conformity and adherence to a prescribed role. But now she was forging her own path, one where she could be both a mother and a mogul, a philanthropist and a businesswoman. Her critics, of course, still didn't understand her. They were quick to judge, quick to call her a cash grabber or accuse her of abandoning her royal duties for material gain. But Meghan knew that her true purpose had always been about more than wealth. It was about creating a life on her terms, one that her children could look up to as a model of independence and ambition. She had shown the world that being royalty didn't mean you couldn't be a success in other fields. In fact, it meant you could use your platform to make a lasting impact. Meghan Markle wasn't just a duchess. She was a force, a woman who had rewritten the rules of success, using her voice, her influence, and her passion to create a new legacy. Meghan's journey had just begun, and the world was about to witness the full scope of her ambition.